I love the memory of coming home at the end of a school day on a day that my mother had made bread, and she would take extra dough and make scones and serve us hot scones with butter and honey on them, just right out of the frying pan. And I just loved that. It was wonderful. In fact, many times coming home and eating fresh bread with jam on it that she'd made, or jelly or honey.
Mother would be making bread. She made bread twice a week, 8 loaves of whole wheat bread. They were wonderful. And we came home from school for bread and honey for snacks. It was absolutely a wonderful thing.
Every Thursday, as I remember it was Thursday, my mother made bread. She made homemade bread every week. And you'd walk in the house and it just smelled fabulous. And she would make doughgats. And what a doughat was, is she'd be mixing the bread and she'd just take a hunk of bread dough and throw it in the frying pan and fry it. And you put honey and butter all over it and eat that for lunch. Oh, it was fabulous. I don't know where we got the name doughgats. I think that probably was a Scout thing from my dad. I don't know. But that was, I remember coming home for lunch every day. But we would walk home for lunch and was it Wednesday?
Tomato soup.
Tomato soup and grilled cheese sandwiches.
Grilled cheese sandwiches.
And
she baked bread once a week, as many loaves as could fit in the oven. I remember coming home from school many times and eating a flat slab of hot bread, drenched with honey.
My parents loved honey, and every year they would get honey from the beehives around. They knew beekeepers and we were involved in seeing the honey harvested or going and purchasing the honey.
And one of the funnest things was to go to Pleasant View to get milk. Then we had these wide mouth jars that Mother would take, and the cream would be like this deep, and then the rest would be whole milk. Oh, thought I'd died and gone to heaven. And she used to make a Bavarian cream recipe that I just found the other day, and it was with whipped cream and pineapple and sugar and lemon, and I'll make sure everybody in the family gets it, but it was a special dessert she'd make out of Bavarian cream. Oh.
Dad did most of the shopping, and I remember going to the Hostess thrift store to buy day-old bread because it was cheaper. Occasionally, he would buy his favorite treat, coconut macaroons, and now they're my favorite too.
We built a root cellar, which I'm not sure too many other of our neighbors had. I mean, there were certain things that we did that others in the neighborhood just didn't do. And basically it was almost like a foxhole, I guess you could say. It was dug out of the ground and then with a roof put over it, but it was only big enough to crawl in. And we would put, and we built it in the fall and build a roof over it, a wooden roof that we must have put a canvas tarp or something over the top of to prevent the moisture from getting in order to seal the top of the roof. I don't remember how we did that. But I remember putting, so when we dug carrots in the fall that we had planted and dug potatoes particularly, my dad loved potatoes and we'd plant a lot of potato plants every year and dig them up in the fall. And so I remember putting potatoes and carrots, certainly. I think we may have put turnips. I'm not sure what other root vegetables we put in there, but putting them in there in the fall. And I have a distinct memory of coming out there in the snow in the wintertime and scraping the snow away from the front opening to that root cellar and crawling in there and getting the potatoes out or the carrots out in the middle of the winter so that we could eat them. And it was fascinating because that's something that now my kids have had absolutely no experience with and would know nothing about. It's something that's just gone. Unless you're a farmer living in a remote location, you wouldn't be doing that. But it's something that I experienced, and I'm sure my dad learned it from his father, and that's what they did on their farm.
I remember us eating green apples from the apple tree because we'd always want to eat them before they got ripe. We'd put salt on them and eat them green. I can remember him standing at the sink coring apples for all of us. It brought him such satisfaction. For supper, he loved nothing better than a bowl of peaches, or he would take a bowl of milk and break pieces of bread in it and then put green grapes and eat that. And he loved watermelon, and he knew how to pick a good melon. I remember him thumping them to get just the perfect ripeness.
Yeah, I remember Dad bringing a whole basket full of peaches, and he would sit down, peel them all, fill a big bowl full of sliced peaches, and sit down and eat the whole bowl full. And I remember him chopping, just the look of satisfaction on his face. He would slice a watermelon in half, and then he would slice each, and he would eat half of a watermelon just in one sitting,
He
him.
loved watermelon.
So he loved pineapple upside down cake. He loved watermelon. He loved grape juice. He loved fig Newtons. Remember fig Newtons? We'd want him to buy chocolate chip cookies. He'd buy fig Newtons.
They were raised with grapes in St. George, and they loved grapes. If my father had a dessert that he really liked, it was just milk and grapes.
And Dad always loved grapes. And so years later, when we were all growing up and we lived on Gramercy, he planted grapes all along the fence. And Mother would squeeze the juice every year. And when people would come to the house, she'd give them grape juice that she'd bottled with, a cookie or a piece of cake or something. And oh, that grape juice was just great. And the two of them were in this enterprise together. He loved growing them. I don't know if she loved bottling them, but she loved serving the juice, and she was really good about that.
Mom made grape juice, and we all summer was one canning and preserving project after another. You start with berries and jam in the early summer, and then there would be peaches and pears in the middle of the summer, and beans, and then in the fall there were apples and all the fall crops. I remember lots of squash and
I remember chili sauce, which I guess now is salsa.
Yes.
When she called it chili sauce, and that's what it, but we
That
loved
she
their
made out
chili
of-
sauce.
she
that
made it out of
made,
the-
uh-huh.
out of the tomatoes, yeah. All summer, Dad was on the back porch chopping up or peeling something, and Mom was in the kitchen putting it in bottles.
Yeah, we helped her.
They produced what we ate, a lot of what we ate.
I wake in the morning when Dad would wake us every other day and pick beans for an hour or two. Then we snapped them and canned them and canned peaches. And I wrote a journal when I was in Young Women, thinking that would be just a good thing to do. And I ripped it up. I wished I hadn't. The journal consisted every day of the number of bottles I'd canned. And I always helped Mother, but there were years where I canned myself alone. And that's how we ate. She probably had 700 plus bottles, and those are quarts, and then there were pints of jam. I'm not sure what the total was. She had them in orange crates downstairs. They were organized just beautifully. Orange crates are wonderful. I wish we had them now. The oranges came in them, and they were just divided in half and then again, so they were like shells, and you could put your fruit on this.
She bottled peaches and pears and applesauce and grape juice. Not only were they delicious and helped us get through the winter, but they were works of art. They could have won blue ribbons at the county fair.
And what I remember, early in the mornings in the summer, we'd get up 5 o'clock and go out and pick beans or pick berries or pick tomatoes. And the thing I remember the most were picking raspberries, because they were hard to pick and they were long and they were really stickery. But, Mother would, she bottled them in quart jars. And you'd go downstairs in the wintertime and there were all these jewels, all these beautiful jewels of raspberries, bottle after bottle after bottle, and then these gorgeous yellow peaches, and it was just like seeing all these jewels in bottles downstairs.
And we picked raspberries and beans, and then we had fruit in the fall. I think we had everything, peaches and pears and apples and cherries, and well, we didn't have cherries, I guess. The cherries were in the orchard that was next to us. And we were able to pick the Tartarian cherries, which were like a pollinizer for the rest of the cherries, and they were rich and made wonderful cherry juice. They were delicious. So that was probably our cherry experience, but the rest of the fruit we had on our land.
With canning and baking and cooking, was oftentimes the house would get consumed with that, and oftentimes it was for people in need or for neighbors or for others who, we weren't just consuming it ourselves.
My mother would buy a doll for me, and she would bake a cake. She would bake it in a round mixing bowl. She'd cut a hole in the top of the cake and stick in the doll so that the doll sunk into the cake up to her waist. And then my mother would decorate the skirt like this wonderful Cinderella, fantastic lace and flowers and scooping skirt, and it's all cake. And then she would put frosting on the top for the bodice of the dress, and I remember her even putting frosting decorations in the hair of the doll. And you had a doll cake. It was my doll cake for several birthdays. And Mom would always bake a cake and decorate this. It was always very special decorations for Grandmother's birthday. And I remember when Grandmother was quite elderly, she wasn't supposed to have a lot of sweets. And so Mom baked a cake that was made out of meatloaf. The cake itself was not cake, it was meatloaf. And then she took whipped potatoes and iced the cake with the potatoes. And then she made the candles out of, she carved these little carrots into candles. And that was the birthday cake for Grandmother. I remember that cake. Just thinking that was so creative, and it looked beautiful. And it was this beautiful birthday cake, but it was not cake.
Mother made fabulous meals. Oh, she was such a good cook. She made great rolls, great pies. She made Swiss steak that Marianne loved. If I could bring her back and say, Mother, make one thing, it would be baking powder biscuits. They were tall, they were big, and they were just soft and flaky.
I didn't learn much about cooking meat. We had ground beef. We had chicken and we had wonderful halibut. We got halibut ends for 39 cents a pound in those days. So it seemed as though we didn't have a lot of cuts of meat, but we did get protein. We had plenty of, ground beef was inexpensive in those days.
She got a little nervous when she'd fix meals for company because she wanted everything to be perfect. I think she didn't see herself as an excellent cook, but she was.
Like at Christmas time, she would make homemade goodies for practically every house on the street. And we would deliver these on Christmas Eve, and she just practically wore herself out. And part of that too was we didn't have a lot of money to spend, but she could bake. And she would make these fabulous chocolates she'd hand dip and divinity and what else? She'd make
Raisin bars and brownies and date cookies.
Right, and panooch and peanut brittle.
And I just remember wanting to get away from the college scene. It was stressful, and I remember just being kind of in a grumpy mood. I was sick of it. It was February, it was snowy, and my friend drove me up to her house because he had to do something, and then he would drive me back. And I walked into her kitchen, and she was making caramels for Valentine's Day. And I remember being so impressed. Caramels, I don't think they're very good, me leave it. And I tasted them. Of course, they were wonderful. I was like, making caramels? I just thought that was so amazing. And she had carefully wrapped them into little wrappers and wax paper and little candies, and neatly laid them in a little box that was red, and they put a bow on it, giving it to me. And so it didn't matter that everything else was going on. She was going to celebrate Valentine's Day and make caramels for me. That really touched me.
Oh, something else he would do that was so fun. Whenever we were given chocolates for Christmas, he'd tuck them away. And then, 6 months later, he'd bring them out and pass them around. Everyone have one. Then he'd tuck it away. Can you remember that?
Yeah.
And cherry chocolates. He loved cherry chocolates.
And I have very vivid memories of that because of the senses that were involved in it, the smell, the taste, the feel, the satisfaction of eating that really good food, are memories that last for a lifetime.